Good evening and welcome to our agenda briefing for the 10th of March 2025 here at the Kalgoorlie Town Hall. Noting that our agenda briefing is starting 30 minutes after the advertised start due to a special council meeting at 6 p.m. So I open tonight's agenda briefing at 6:30 p.m. and on behalf of the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, we'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet this evening. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I do have a disclaimer for those who are in the public gallery, which are staff this evening, but I will continue to read. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live on the Council's website in accordance with the City's public participation in Council meeting policy, which can be viewed on Council's website. All reasonable care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given if your image is broadcast. The recommendations contained in the agenda are officers' recommendations only and should not be acted upon until Council has resolved to adopt those recommendations. The resolutions of Council should be confirmed by perusing the minutes of the Council meeting at which these recommendations were considered. Members of the public should also note that they act at their own risk if they enact any resolution prior to receiving official written notification of Council's decision. The purpose of agenda briefing sessions is for councillors to ask questions and to obtain additional information in respect to items presented on the ordinary council meeting agenda. Questions asked by councillors are to be answered by the CEO or a person nominated by the CEO and/or person presiding. No decisions are made at agenda briefing sessions, no statements are to be made, and there's no debate on items conducted. Alongside myself this evening, we have Deputy Mayor Della, who is with us this evening, Councillor Bodica. We have Councillor Winner, who is attending via phone. Good evening to you, Councillor Winner. Just to confirm you're still there. Thank you. Councillor O'Donnell is present in the chamber, so too is Councillor Brownlee, Councillor Turner and Councillor Viskovich. Our members of staff, we have the Director of Engineering, Louis Camporelli, who is assisting in presiding this evening. Director of Corporate and Commercial, Cass Yeager, is here tonight. Our Executive Manager of Finance, Zandra Kernock, is here, alongside Francis Liston, our Executive Manager of Governance and Risk Services. Lauren Chapman-Holly is here this evening as the Manager of Community Development. Paul Lee is our Manager of Development and Growth. Also with us in the assisting role with Advocacy and Strategy is Damara Landenberg, who's here tonight as well, alongside Matthew Pearson, who is our IT Cyber Security Analyst. Got all the staff. Our CEO is currently an apology for this evening alongside our Director of Advocacy and Strategy. They're in Alice Springs this evening enjoying a beautiful night in the Red Centre. And we have an apology from Councillor Johnson. No leave of absence and there's no interest items that have been received yet. Councillors, do you have any interests? Not at this stage. It may be presented during the evening. No urgent business will be considered, so therefore let's roll into the reports of committees. And to conduct the first report of committee, which we have just the one committee, which will take on several items this evening. I think we're up to about 14.111. It is Francis Liston, who is our Executive Manager of Governance and Risk Services, who will do a majority of those. Francis, the first item is the annual committee work plan for 2025.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, this is the report just providing the committee with an outline of what reports will be provided to the committee over 2025.
Any questions, councillors? No questions. Thank you. Francis, the compliance audit return for 2024 is item 1412.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, this is the report setting out the regulatory requirement for a CAR, the compliance audit return, to be completed through the committee and then adopted by council. It came through committee last week, noting there was a correction with an error that was included in the CAR and otherwise is as attached and provided to committee.
Thank you, Francis. Councillors, any questions on that? Councillor Turner.
Not a question, but perhaps
if it's not a question, we can't take it tonight.
Just a clarification for members of the public that may be watching that a CAR is not a CAR. What's the acronym stands for?
The compliance audit return is the CAR, as pointed out in the subject of the item of 1412. Thank you. 14, with no further questions, councillors? No? Thank you. Audit recommendations progress. Again, an item from the Audit and Risk Committee. Zandra Kernock, our Executive Manager of Finance, who also has a couple of items tonight. Zandra, if you'd like to come forward to brief council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the audit recommendations progress is a report showing the status of recommendations made by the OAG as part of their annual financial and ICT audit. So this shows those which have been completed and those which are currently ongoing.
Thank you. Zandra, any questions, councillors, on audit recommendations progress? No, thank you. All noted. 14.1 for the year-to-date progress dashboards. Very comprehensive for councillors. Unfortunately for members of the public, they're confidential, but they do give councillors a very good representation of where the directories are at. Over to you, Francis. Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you said, these are dashboards that are shown by Directorate, showing actual progress against budget and non-financial data up until 31 December 2024.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No questions. Thank you. 14.15, tenders awarded under delegation from October 2024 to December 2024. Zandra.
So this report shows that there was only one contract that was awarded under delegation in that time period.
Thank you, councillors. That's noted in your summary statement as well as your commentary in that item. Any questions? So I've got a couple. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My agenda seems to be different to what is coming up on the screen.
Stand by. Oh, it confirmed. It is different. My 14.15 in our agenda is overdue debtors report. In my run sheet, they're around the other way. So
with the last two.
14.15, if you'd like to do, go back to 14.15, which is the overdue debtors report. Thank you.
Okay. I was keeping up with whatever you were asking me, so it's okay. Overdue debtors report. So this report shows the debtors which were owing at 31 December 2024, which are greater than $10,000 in value and greater than 90 days at that time. So this report shows that debtor days have dropped since last year, so it's gone from 54 days to 50 days, which shows the city staff have continued to collect debt in a timely manner, and the number of debtors has also dropped from 12 to 6 since last year. This report also shows that the CEO has used his delegation of writing off sundry debts up to the value of 25 grand twice to approve the write-off of 2 debts in the financial year valued at more than $1,000, and both were written off due to the businesses having closed since the debt was incurred.
Thank you, Francis. I've done it again. Finance and Francis and Zandra, all in the same line. I apologise. Zandra, do we have any questions for Zandra? Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell.
Roger,
No
business mentioned.
Yes, no business mentioned because there is a confidential attachment.
Yes. Where a business is not paying their rent, and I noticed in the debtors report it was like around $32,000. So I'm assuming that could be around 9 months. I'm not sure where they had that. But once they start not paying 1 month, they're behind 2 months, does the city have any rights at all in getting someone evicted, or it's a very long process to get them out if they're not paying?
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Director of Engineering, would you like to handle that one or would you like to pass it on? Pass it on, yes. Go ahead, Zandra.
No worries. Yep, so through the Mayor. So my understanding is with the rental tenants, the leasing, so we can breach them for non-payment of rent, and yes, we can evict them, and we have changed locks in the past due to non-payment of rent. So this one's a funny one, so I think you're actually referring to another report, which I have as 15.1.4, which is a specific bad debt write-off. So that's a funny one in that they moved out, but they didn't hand the keys back, so rent continues. So they didn't physically hand the keys back in, and then the business went into administration. So that's why that one got as high as it was.
Thank you, Zandra. Any other further questions, councillors? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification on if someone was to potentially have an interest in one of the debtors, we're only receiving a report. We're not making any decisions. So clarifying that is what I'm understanding.
As the officer recommendation states, that the committee recommend to council to receive the overdue debtors report, reporting details of overdue debts as those debts have already occurred to council as of the 31st of December 2024, and council are to note the status of those various overdue debts owed to the city. At that particular point, there is no recommendation for council to be doing anything else apart from noting those reports. Should there be an action from that particular report, then an interest, I believe that the interest is then for activated. Thank you. Thank you. No further questions to Zandra? Thank you. Zandra, you also gave 14.16, which councillors have in their agenda as 14.16. We've got it as 14.15. You gave a detail on the tenders awarded under delegation. Councillors, was there any questions on that one? Councillor Turner.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, I don't even have 14.16 in my agenda.
14.16 is the purchase. Okay, we've seemed to have skipped one in our run sheet.
So mine goes from 14.15 to 14.17 in my reports. So in any reports.
Okay.
It's on the agenda,
So,
but not in the reports.
Thank you, councillors. The agenda as per, I've got two different agendas. Can we get some clarification, please, on the order of the agenda items?
Should we have a report?
Thank you, Director. If you'd just like to turn your mic on. Thank you.
It's in the agenda, but not in the...
Online, if you go online, you'll find the actual 14.16 on the online version. It hasn't pulled through.
To us?
Yeah.
I've got it on the agenda now, but there wasn't. Yep. Okay.
Just for clarification purposes, I think we were travelling okay to 14.14, which was the year-to-date progress, councillors. Was that correct? Audit recommendations progress was 14.13. What did you have at 14.13? Okay. So it seems like something hasn't pulled through. Okay, thank you. It seems like something hasn't pulled through on some various different agendas. We'll cover them all by 14.1.11, but let's get through that first of all. You might need to just jump around on your agendas until we get to where we need to. So we've covered off 14.13, councillors. That was the audit recommendations progress. 14.14, was there any further questions just to clarify on the year-to-date progress dashboards? No. Tenders awarded under delegation from October 2024 to December 2024. Zandra has given us detail on that already. Are there any questions on that particular item? It may be listed as something different in yours. I think that might have been 14.16 in your agendas. So there's no questions on the policy exemptions? No? Okay. 14.16, we've covered overdue debtors report. The purchasing policy exemptions is probably what we need a briefing on, which is in my agenda 14.17 and in your agenda is 14.16. Go ahead, Zandra.
Okay. Thank you,
Apologies,
Mr. Mayor.
councillors.
So purchasing policy exemptions. This report just shows the procurement exemptions used by city staff to procure for the period from 1 October 2024 to 31 December 2024, and there's nothing significant to note.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors, on that? No? I believe that was your 14.16, is that correct? 14.17, then you will have your workplace health and safety quarterly report, councillors. Is that right? Yep, okay, I've got that as 14.18. And that is Francis.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I've absolutely no idea what's happened with that, so I'll fix this. I apologise. Through the Mayor, the WHS quarterly reports are provided for 3 separate months, which is just providing an overview of some of the statistics which come through our People and Culture team.
Thank you. Councillor, is there any questions regarding the WHS quarterly report? No. Thank you, Francis. $14,118 for yourselves, councillors. $14,119 for myself is the asset management project. Director of Engineering.
Thank you, and through to me. The report is an update of the city's progress in relation to its internal audit project relating to the asset management framework as set by the Government of Western Australia's Department of Local Government.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any questions on 1418, Asset Management Project? Go ahead, Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through to the Director. I was wondering how we are going with our asset management, that I believe we were a little bit behind. I just wanted to know if we're close to catching up, or you have an estimated time that we would be caught up with our asset management plan?
Director.
Thank you, and through to me. To get the whole asset management framework, we think it's about 2.5 years from go. We're 6 months in, so we've still got 2 years to go.
Thank you. Councillors, I've realised where the error is. 1413 was the audit recommendations progress, which you haven't got in your agenda. So the error is at 1413, which hasn't pulled through on the docs on tap. So, which we've had questions on tonight. Thank you. Any further questions to the Director of Engineering? No. Thank you, Director. 1419 in your agenda, councillors. 14110 in the full agenda is Pool Inspection Project Plan Update. The Manager of Development and Growth, Mr. Lees.
Through the Mayor, I actually haven't got a report on that, so I'll have to borrow one from somebody else.
Paul, if you'd like the Director of Engineering to take that one for you tonight, if that's okay, it's up to you.
You can if you like, so I've got it before me, but it's up to you.
Yep. Go ahead, Director. Thanks, Paul.
Through the Mayor, Council's asked to receive a report in relation to the statistics for the swimming pool inspections and pool gate inspections over the past 8 months.
Thank you, Director. Any questions to that? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering if there's a way that we could potentially include the community a little bit more to help these pool inspections be done. I'm just trying to think outside the box how we could incorporate them to come on board to help them get completed. Just something that maybe have to take on notice.
Thank you. I think Paul can answer that one for us this evening. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. What we've been doing is allowing inspections fairly early in the morning and also after hours in the evenings. We've had a vehicle and officer dedicated to that. What we're getting down to now is really the sort of the rats and mice of it, and the ones that are very, very difficult to get access to the sites, and we're persevering. And I think the information that we're looking at providing in the coming up events will be good. We've got some really clear, good information to put out, and we can actually use that and circulate that as well. Putting the whole compliance matter in really plain English for people. But unfortunately, it's those last few where people just don't want to give access that we probably ultimately are going to have to serve them with a letter from the solicitor.
Thanks, Paul. Also note, Councillor Viskovich, the City will publish social media posts advising residents of their obligation as a owner of a property with a swimming pool, which will occur over the next couple of months. Also continue the focus on overdue inspections alongside the re-inspection program and also the responsibility that's been aligned to sit with the health and compliance as well. So that is noted in the report.
Thank you. Is the policy that we have at the moment, is there any provisions that a owner can be charged a fee for not having their pool compliance done?
Yes, through the Mayor, it is an offence not to have your pool compliant. And as in all things, you know, local government are expected to give every opportunity, but obviously this is a matter where the risks are high, and I think we're getting to the point where we're going to have to serve some letters on people to say, look, you must comply or we're going to prosecute.
Thank you. Councillor Bodica.
Yeah, through the Mayor, I was just going to ask Paul, do we have statistics on levels of non-compliance of pool owners currently at the moment? Is it be only a small proportion, or would it be a large proportion of those pool owners that are non-compliant? And once that has been located, what action do we then take?
Paul.
Through the Mayor, yes, what we've done on the program now, we're getting into a 4-year cycle, which is what we have to do. There's a very large number that were outstanding, and we've worked through those, and now we're actually working through those that are due in their 4-year cycle and actually taking that seriously and going back and re-inspecting those that were done 4 years ago. But what we're now dealing with is the small number who are just not responding to our inquiries and our requests for access. So ultimately we will take action on those. I don't have the number with me, but I think it might well be in the report. But the number is reducing all the time, but it's really getting down to the difficult ones now.
So there were 73 overdue inspections as noted in your report, Councillor Bodica, and 346 pool inspections due to be completed this year. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. Councillors Viskovich and Bodica brought up similar to what I want to know. It's a very serious thing, complying with the pool regulations, fencing and everything. If you've ever been to a drowning, I recommend never do it again. It's not good, seeing a little kid dead. If these people don't allow you to see, they just ignore you, the inspectors, what will happen to those people? Does it just drag on for 12 months, 18 months, you just keep sending letters? And what is a penalty that they could receive for not complying?
Thanks, Paul.
Through the Mayor, the city now has a formal compliance unit, and we're in the process of staffing that. So that puts us in a position where we can actually we have staff dedicated to formal compliance. The next matter is actually to gain access, and we can do that in several ways, and we can take additional staff there other than just the pool inspector and ensure that the inspectors are safe. But ultimately, and we need to work through that process now to actually gain access and inspect, because that's our responsibility. But ultimately, I think where the room with councillors are alluding to, and I agree, is that we have the option of taking legal access, so that if we can't gain access or people won't bring their pool barriers up to compliance, we can actually, through the courts, prosecute.
Thank you. Councillor O'Donnell.
Just a point of clarification. Yes, you mentioned going through the court system. My experience is you could be looking up to 18 months if somebody has to go to court and they plead not guilty, so that pool just stays as is. Where I'm getting at is, where I'm getting at is that it is serious. Pool not complying with the pool fencing. Are we able to go through WOLGA or anything like that to try in a uniform approach to improve that? Because from what I'm hearing from the manager is that it could drag on for some time before you can even look at it. and the 4-year cycle could come again.
Would you like to consider it for some detail with Wolga to understand what the local government position is across the rest of the state in regards to that? Maybe that's something that we
Exactly.
could take on notice and something for next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bodica.
I just wanted to ask another question. I just wanted to clarify. Paul, the Mayor was saying that from 23rd of November to 18th February 2025 that there'd been those pool inspections, but then it said there are 73 overdue inspections that were due prior to 2025. So does that just mean that we don't have enough people on the ground to be able to go and have a look at those pools, or does that mean that those people that have got those pools are non-compliant? That's what I was just trying to clarify before. Thank you.
Paul.
Through the Mayor, we have not been able to gain access to those properties, so we have been trying to. So, which I've been outlining tonight in terms of the process around that going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Just to the Director through the Mayor, just my question is, in between January and March, we had 270 letters and emails sent for pools that were due for inspection between January and March, and they were sent in January. The uptake of that was 152 inspections were completed over those 2 months, which leaves 118 outstanding. The online booking system seems to have improved so that people can now do online rather than over the phone, so that obviously if they've got a letter and they can't get on the phone, they can go online and do that. Do you think that by putting that system in place that is helping, and we are reducing the amount of inspections that we're falling behind on because people won't let us in? Because sometimes it's not a matter of letting us in, it's a matter of just organising a time because of their work.
Thank you. I think Paul answered that in the very outset to say that the staff are being flexible, but I'll let him continue on.
Yes, through the Mayor. Yes, look, a couple of things. One, we started from a very low base. Two, since I've been here, we've taken it very seriously, and we've taken the 4-year cycle very seriously. The third point is that we've initiated some actions which have helped, including an option to go online. We've also initiated the use of a tablet, which actually puts the information gained at the inspection directly into our system, into CI, which means that the officer hasn't had to go back in the office and download it so they can do more. As I said, we're at that point now where we are continuing with the 4-year inspections that are due again, which is a big shift, and we're focusing on those last few, if I can use that word, where we're having difficulty gaining access, and we're persevering with that for the next while, but we will get to the point we have to make a decision and start using the legislative system to force entry and then compliance if required.
Thanks, Paul. Any other further questions, councillors? No? Thank you. That's 14.1.10 in the full agenda, 14.1.9 for yourselves. Just confirming, we move on to reports of officers, and 15.1.1 is the accounts payable. And 15.1.2 is the statement of financial activity, which will follow on. And Zandra will have carriage of that as our Executive Manager of Finance. Over to you, Zandra, for 15.1.1 and 15.1.2.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So 15.1.1, accounts payable. This shows the spend for February. It's totalling 8.7 million, which is a little bit lower than average, but obviously February is a shorter month and there's nothing of concern in there.
Thank you, Zandra. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is probably something I should have asked a long time ago, but who goes through the one-by-one lines of EFT reports? Like, obviously, we see them. Is there someone responsible to actually double-check every single payment that goes through as a second set of eyes, or is it just one person that approves each payment?
Sandra.
Through the Mayor. So this report just summarises all the EFT payment, well, it summarises every single payment that we make, but the way the EFT payments work is, so from start to finish, an officer would raise, say, a purchase order that's then proved by somebody who's got financial delegation. Then a separate team enters that invoice into the system. If there's a variance, they then need to reach out to them. And then they put through a payment run, which is then checked by one of the accountants, which is then checked by myself. So I check higher value, match back to the invoice. And then I then process it through the bank as the first approval, and then we need 2 signatories to even get it through the bank as well. So there's a lot of processes in place, and then, yeah, it's just a report that shows every single payment through there.
Thank you, insightful. Any other further questions? No? Zandra, also, sorry, Executive Manager of Finance, you also have the Statement of Financial Activity, and I've also got you down for 15.13 as well. But 15.12 first of all.
So 15.12 is the Statement of Financial Activity for January 2025. So it shows that income and expenditure are both within 1% of the budgeted expectations. There are some variances noted in there within the table. So I don't know if anyone's got questions on any of those.
Any questions, councillors? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you to the Executive Manager of Finance. I'd just like to know that the variances from grants funding is lower than budgeted. Is that a timing on those variances?
Through the Mayor, so if you're referring to the proceeds from capital grants? Yep. So yes, you're correct, that is timing. So some of that's obviously the road grants of $1 million. So it's just the timing of when we get the roads done. Then we have to send off paperwork because there's an acquittal attached to that. So an external party has to audit what we've spent before they give us the funds. So it's just a timing that will come through shortly. So that's a bigger chunk of it. Then obviously there's 577,000, there's a K missing there, for Cal City Centre. So again, the project's not 100% complete, and it won't be until the artworks are fully installed and the toilets are complete, and then we get to receive the rest of the money.
Thank you. Any other further questions, councillors? No? Thank you. 15.13, superannuation payments to council members.
So in this report, so just so you know, City staff attended multiple webinars to fully understand the amendments to the Local Government Act, so the Local Government Amendment Act 2024, in relation to the superannuation payments to the elected members. So City staff are recommending that super payments commence from 1 July 2025. Obviously, these become mandatory from 19th October 2025, but this allows City staff to account for it in the 2026 financial budget. And they'd be paid at 12%, which is in line with the changes to the Superannuation Act. Super would be paid on elected members' remuneration, this being the sitting fees, the mayoral and deputy mayoral allowances, and noting that elected members can opt out of receiving superannuation payments by writing to the CEO.
Thank you. Zandra, any questions, councillors? No. Thank you. 15.14, Mosaic, stay there, I've got you down for this one as well. Mosaic Brands Limited Rockman's write-off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as briefly mentioned earlier, so Mosaic Brands, trading as Rockman's, they went into administration. They owed the city some rent and interest on the overdue rent. So the administrators have written to the city and advised that there's insufficient funds to pay all the creditors. When companies go into administration, they'll pay the employees first. So they've already advised that there won't be enough money to pay all the creditors, which includes us. So we're proposing that we write off the debt of about approximately 33,000. Noting there'll be no impact on the budgeted bottom line as we have a bad debt provision of 175,000.
Thank you. Executive Manager of Finance, any questions? Just on the fact that they're paying their staff back, are they not even entertaining any of their other creditors?
From memory, from reading the letter, I know they always pay an order and its employees always are first, and the way they've worded it is that there just is insufficient funds to pay the creditors once the employees have been paid.
Okay, thank you. No other further questions, councillors? No, thank you. Thanks, Sandra, for those tonight. 15.2, Advocacy and Strategy, and Damara Langenberg is our Coordinator of Strategic Grants and Administration. Damara, come forward. Thank you. Registration as a Roadwise Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 15.2.1 relates to registration as a Roadwise Council. The City has received an invitation from the Western Australian Local Government Association to register it as a Roadwise Council. Being a Roadwise Council provides the City with support from WALGA's road safety team towards delivering best practice road safety initiatives. At the 16 September 2024 Ordinary Council meeting, Deputy Mayor Della proposed a motion that the CEO investigate re-engaging in the Roadwise Council program. A further motion was passed at the 20 January 2025 OCM whereby Council would continue to advocate for additional support for the Roadwise Council program and other road safety initiatives. Council is asked to accept Walga's invitation to register as a Roadwise Council and endorse the City's Director of Engineering and Manager of Engineering to act as the primary point of contact for the Roadwise program. Thank you.
Thank you. Damara, questions, councillors? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I'd just like to double check that we will continue to advocate through other advocacy and strategy programs into the future as well, and probably not rest our laurels just on this Roadwise Council program.
Damara?
Through the Mayor, yes, it is my understanding that we will continue to advocate through other avenues and not just through Roadwise Council.
Excellent. Any other further questions? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that the Roadwise is in relation to laws and so forth, but is it also in relation to the condition of our roads?
It's a normal, probably a working group or thereabouts of many of the agencies who come together. The previous committee was comprised of representatives from the likes of Main Roads, the city, police, community members, and a couple of other agencies that are affected, I think St John Ambulance as well, looking at not just road conditions but strategies on ensuring that road safety is implemented in our local government areas. So that could be from advocating for speed cameras, it could be from advocating for speed reductions and other various mechanisms. The two appointments that we're looking at internally, which would be the Director of Engineering and the Manager of Engineering, would have all of the relevant experience and the expertise to be able to be the primary point of contact. If councillors were involved in that, there's probably 9 times out of 10 that you'd have to, maybe even more, that you'd have to rely on the information from staff. So it's better to have staff there who are able to implement that. Tamara, is there anything else to add to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for clarifying. So just with the fact that our team within the administration team are going to be taking on further responsibility, is that going to impact the fact that we are a little short-staffed? Are they in a position to take on further with this? I think it's great. Yes. Are they in a position to take on more work?
Director of Engineering, you're being endorsed under the Officer Recommendation and you're Manager of Engineering. Would you like to answer the question?
Thank you, and through the Mayor, no issues taking on the extra responsibility of Roadwise. We've looked into it and made sure that we've got enough staff to cover, so we'll delegate around.
Thank you. Any other further questions, councillors? No? Thank you, Damara, and well done on your debut. (15.3.1) the Golf Course Dam Site Evaluation Report. Director of Engineering, I also note that there may be some declarations of interest regarding that one. However, we still have a week to enter them, so they may still come forward. Director of Engineering.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. The report is asking for an agreement that was asked by Councillor Johnson. Was Councillor Johnson in a November council meeting, OCM, and Viskovich. Okay. To look at other dam sites at the Kalgoorlie Golf Course. The report has looked at 3 sites and come back with the most feasible and the one that makes the least, most feasible, captures the most water and the least impact to the community in Dam Site 1.
Councillors, questions on 15.3.1 Golf Course Dam Site Evaluation Report. Director of Engineering, just noting that option 1 is your recommendation. Should option 1 play out to deliver 27.4 megalitres, do you envisage that there could be other further dams after potentially this first option, if implemented, that you could see happening in the future? Option one seems like it's the most logical at this point in time, but long term, is there other options for us?
There may be some other options, but it'd be more around the detention basin than damming in the space and being able to hold water before you push it further downstream to be used.
Thank you. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to clarify, my question that was prior to the meeting, this is near T17, is that correct?
That is correct. It's to the left side of the 16th green and behind the 17th tee.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through to the Director. I just have a question regarding the Jeff Marsh Golf Course design and whether there are any limitations or restrictions as to changing the design by having water on the course.
Director of Engineering.
No changes to the design of the golf course. The only changes will be through detention basins and getting water, rather than holding it, pushing it further downstream to the dam. But it doesn't change the integrity nor the design of the golf course.
Deputy Mayor.
So you can confirm that that won't change a Jeff Marsh requirements for the course?
We haven't spoken to Graham Marsh. Jeff's a cricketer, but to Graham Marsh. But it won't be, we can, but there won't be any fundamental changes to the layout of the golf course by these dams.
Thank you. Just noting also, Director, in regards to the flow that you'll have towards any part of option one, would you be looking to improve the drainage to that particular site to make sure that we're not losing water being absorbed through any of the creek channels along that way?
That is correct. So the current design of the water flow throughout the golf course actually flows past the dam and not into the current dam. So the intent is to widen, deepen the current dam and then have the inflow into the back of that dam.
Thank you. Any other further questions, councillors? No. 1532, still with you, Director of Engineering, T008-2425, City Cleaning.
Thank you. And through the Mayor, Council was asked to consider the submissions received for tender T008-2425, City Cleaning tender, and award the tender to Tenderer D.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor O'Donnell.
I might not have been able to see, but I looked through a few. How much was it? Is it just one tender for all the different locations that they put in for?
The scope was divided into the three separable portions. So yes, it was one tender for three portions of work. That was my understanding. And the Director of Engineering is nodding his head, so I'll take that as a yes. Go ahead, follow up.
One more question. Am I able to ask what that amount was for? Are we able to ask that or not yet?
Director of Engineering.
I'll take it on notice and I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Viskovich, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to clarify, is this a new service that we are taking on, or is there someone currently completing this service?
Director of Engineering.
We currently have a company providing this whole service, and they've been extended, but they've reached the end of their tender period, so we've re-advertised.
Follow up, Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you. Am I allowed to ask if the current company are re-tendering?
We can take that on notice for you, Councillor Viskovich. Thank you. Any other further questions, councillors? Director of Engineering, a note in the report that the endowment block toilets are noted in the scope, so that means that the preferred tenderer that council endorses next week will be in charge of ensuring that the toilets in our CBD, when the new facility opens adjacent to Markets Arcade, will be taken care of as well? Was that included in the scope that they will be providing a service to our community and manning those toilets?
They would be in charge of cleaning, but they're not in charge of manning those toilets.
Thank you. And just to follow up to that, we're looking at manning those toilets once they're built. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other further questions, councillors, on cleaning? Councillor Bodica.
Sorry, this might be a silly question, but is this separate to cleaning of streets and everything? This is only cleaning of buildings, not, so is there a separate tender, for cleaning of streets? Because our staff still continue to do that.
Correct. Our staff still continue to clean streets. This is for the cleaning
Totally
of...
separate.
Correct. This is for the cleaning of the Eastern Goldfields Community Centre, the admin building, ranges, Ray Finlayson downstairs, wastewater treatment plant, men's shed, Seaway O'Connor Hall, Goldfields War Museum, Goldfields Clubhouse, a golf course clubhouse, I should say, golf course maintenance shed, market arcade, endowment block, public toilets and oval toilets, as well as the art centre, as well as the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Airport.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did get all that and I read all that. But the other thing I was going to say, so that doesn't include cleaning of that St Barbara's Square area where we've got the children's park or anything. That's totally separate to this in itself. Thank you.
That's done by our staff who do a wonderful job.
I did read all that.
And who go above and beyond every morning to ensure our city is very presentable. Any other further questions? Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through to the Director. Were any of the tenderers local businesses?
Director.
Thank you. And through the Mayor, 2 of the 5 tenderers were local tenderers.
Thank you. No further questions? Thank you. 15.4, Corporate and Commercial. Cass Yeager, as our Director of Corporate and Commercial, is the fee having a great one tonight. Fee waiver request, Australian Golf Foundation scholarship. Over to you, Cass.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is for Council to consider a fee waiver request from Golf Australia for 12 local girls to participate in the Australian Golf Foundation Junior Girls Scholarship Program. The scholarship was established in 2021 and is a 12-month program which aims to address challenges in keeping girls engaged in youth sport by fostering technical development, providing personal growth and developing social connections. Golf Australia has contacted the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder to seek support in delivering the scholarship by waiving the Junior Golf Club membership for 12 local girls aged 9 to 16. As the CEO doesn't have delegated authority to approve the fee waiver, the request is presented to Council. There are different membership fees for juniors depending on their age, so the exact amount of the fee waiver may range between $2,700 and $4,716. The City's also received in-principle support from the Goldfields Golf Club for the fee waiver request, as they receive a portion of membership fees subject to ratification by their board. Officers recommend that the fee waiver request be approved as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Director of Corporate and Commercial. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering if we have 12 girls already lined up for this scholarship, or is it just coming to fruition and we're putting it out there to find them?
Yeah. Thank you, through the Mayor. Yes, so this is just starting up the scholarship and then it would go out for interest. So there's no one lined up at this stage.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you, Director. 15.5 is Development and Community, and councillors, at our last Ordinary Council meeting, we resolved to bring back to the March Ordinary Council meeting, having investigated opportunities and financial implications for an annual Kids Fest and inclusion of New Year's Eve events. 15.5.1 is the Event Strategy 25-27. There is a change in officer recommendation from the original motion that was brought from the original recommendation. Over to you, Lauren, who is our Manager of Community Development.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you've mentioned, I am returning this report on the Event Strategy 2025 to 2027 to Council following the requests for amendments. Council is asked to endorse the City's Event Strategy 25 to 27, which aims to increase community involvement, boost economic growth through tourism and foster social inclusivity. It covers existing events like the Christmas Street Party and Multicultural Festival, proposes new initiatives such as the Kaleidoscope Festival, and emphasises sustainable practices and community capacity building. The strategy includes actions with specific goals, responsibilities and success metrics across various categories, including arts, culture and economic development, and community feedback played a crucial role in shaping the strategy. The feedback provided by Council has been incorporated into the report and its recommendations.
Thank you, Manager of Community Development. Councillors, any questions? No questions? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering, the Kids Fest that we did discuss, we were going to call the pop-up the opposite year something in line with the Kalgoorlie Kids Fest. So that was that mental alignment of it happening every year. I don't recall seeing that in here. Did we end up changing that?
Manager of Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Mayor, Councillor, that will be incorporated into the marketing, but not necessarily the strategy. It has been noted in the report that Kids Fest and the pop-up project occur annually, but alternating.
Any further questions, councillors? No. Thank you. Lauren, stay there, don't go too far. 1552, the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Tourism Plan 2025-2030.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council is asked to endorse the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Tourism Plan 2025-2030. The plan outlines a roadmap for the city to leverage its unique heritage and natural assets to grow its visitor economy over the next 5 years. And it emphasises a shift towards a more coordinated and visitor-centric approach, recognising that tourism is a key economic driver whilst identifying challenges and areas for growth. The plan incorporates extensive community and stakeholder consultation, is a strategic roadmap for the city and aims to enhance visitor economy.
Thank you, Manager of Community Development. Any questions, councillors? No. Thank you, Lauren. I think Paul Lees wraps up the rest of our agenda tonight with some items. A change of use, first of all, a holiday house at lot 315, number 16, Belgravia Place, South Kalgoorlie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Council is asked to approve an application for a change of use from a single house to a holiday house. That's the definition in the scheme, at 16 Belgravia Place, South Kalgoorlie. The application in this instance is not retrospective. The property in question contains an established 3-bedroom house with vehicle access off Belgravia Place and 2 on-site uncovered car parking spaces. The request is for a maximum of 6 guests with self check-in between 2 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Guests must check out before 12 noon. The applicant has submitted an operational management plan that includes a code of conduct and outlines the process for managing noise, complaints and emergency procedures. Mandatory quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. Kalgoorlie Airbnb management will manage check-in and check-out and deal with guests' requirements, complaints and general caretaking services. It is recommended that Council approve the application with the conditions as proposed, including compliance with the operational management plan and limiting the approval to 12 months to ensure that the activity does not result in nuisance impacts on neighbours.
Thank you, Manager of Development and Growth. Any questions, councillors? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the Director. We're seeing a lot of these come through for change of use. When are we going to see a change of use policy for holiday houses?
A fine question, Deputy Mayor. Over to you, Paul, for an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do have some notes here on that, so I can take you through that. So the issue around short-term rental accommodation is something that the registration has been required by the state, and as I've said before, if a provider advertises on Airbnb website and the property isn't registered, then there's quite hefty fines. So what we're getting here is some retrospective and a number of new ones. that require registration, and they're coming through for planning approval. The state is now expecting local government to amend their schemes to, in fact, have a definition of short-term rental accommodation. So we're using the definition holiday house at the moment, because that, in fact, is the closest definition that we can use in the scheme. And the scheme requires us, in looking at a use, in using that definition which best meets the activity. But what we need to do now is prepare a scheme amendment which will actually add the use of short-term rental accommodation into the scheme. And then in doing that, there will be two forms of short-term rental accommodation. One will be hosted and one will be unhosted. The hosted form will be like a bed and breakfast, and we are proposing that'll be a P use, a permitted use. In many cases, it won't require an approval. The unhosted form, we will have to determine what the identifier is. Is it a use? In other words, does it require advertising? Or is it a discretionary use, meaning that council has discretion on whether to approve it or not? Now, the reason, one of the reasons the state has done this, obviously, is that it's obviously been getting out of hand, and that some communities, or many communities, and particularly over east, there were so many rentals in often in coastal locations that people who were there in the service industry were getting priced out. They simply had nowhere to rent or to live. So it's become a national issue. What we'd like to do is bring to council in a concept forum what a scheme amendment would look like, how it'll work, and get an idea from councillors how you'd like to define these uses, which of course give council powers to regulate how the uses occur, and that if they're causing nuisance, to go back and remedy it. So it's something, while we have a lot of them, it's something I think which is quite important to be able to regulate so they don't cause nuisance and they don't get out of hand. I'm sorry, that's a long-winded answer.
No, that's all good, Paul. I'll appreciate the councillors will look forward to that at the concept. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do look forward to that concept meeting. I just wanted to clarify two things, if I could. One is a maximum of 6 occupants in a 3-bedroom house. Is that a usual request?
Yes, through the Mayor. Interesting enough, a dwelling is actually considered to contain up to 6 people. Now, we know that isn't always the case, but that's the definition of the scheme. So 6 is sort of the maximum in a dwelling. You'll notice with some of these reports, the 2-bedroom ones have 4. So they're proposing 4. So 6 for 3-bedroom is sort of maximum what you'd expect for this use.
Councillor Viskovich, go in.
Thank you. And just my second question, I do note that this house has a pool in the building. Is that I'm reading in previous planning requests? Can we confirm that this pool has been inspected and up to date with their inspections?
Manager?
Through the Mayor, that's I think a valid comment. And yes, the city can do that. However, what we've got before us is an application under the Planning and Development Act. What we're looking at is pool regulation under the Building Act, and the two acts don't cross over. You can't use one application under one act to actually regulate on another, but we will look into it and ensure that that is on the program and it has been inspected at some point, and if not, we will ensure it is done so.
We'll take that question on notice, and Councillor Viskovich, if the staff can provide you a better answer.
So just to clarify, we can't make a decision on a change of use if they have not complied with council requests for pool inspections? Is that what?
Correct, because we're being asked to make a decision under the local planning scheme, not under a different piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boddicott.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Under the details of the proposal, Paul, it talks about check-in between the hours of 2 p.m. and 8:30 and must check out before 12. So how are we actually going to be able to monitor that people are actually only using it for short term rather than, staying there for longer periods of time? And is that going to be reliant upon somebody checking, or is that going to be on the neighbours telling us what's going on, or how exactly is that going to work in the policy?
Thank you, Councillor Bodycar.
Prospective
Manager?
policy.
Through the Mayor, I think there's a couple of ways these are regulated. One, obviously, through Kalgoorlie-Boulder Airbnb management. So you have a formal management process around that. People are getting paid to do it. And secondly, yes, I think if it is abused, that we will get complaints from neighbours. So our compliance unit can investigate.
Follow-up question, Councillor Bodycar?
Sorry. What will the plan forward be if somebody does overstay that short-term period within that property? What's the ways around that to get them to come into line?
Go ahead, Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the Mayor. What we can do is we can talk to the state around the regulations around short-term rental accommodation, and obviously we can talk to the provider. If it's being used for long-term rental, then the city will have to look into that and take compliance action, because in fact it's no longer a house, it's actually a holiday house, and therefore the use must comply with that definition.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you, Paul. Our next item is item 1554, also change of use holiday house, lot 2, number 16A, Salisbury Road, South Kalgoorlie. Over to you, Manager.
Through the Mayor. So Council's asked to approve an application for a retrospective change of use from a single house to a holiday house, 16A Salisbury Road, South Kalgoorlie. So the property forms part of a two-lot survey strata development and is accessed via the Battle Axe leg. The site contains an established three-bedroom home with 2 single carports available for car parking. The applicant advises that the holiday house has been in operation since November 2024, and the city has received a submission advising that the police were called on one occasion because of unruly behaviour and concerns about the potential number of people staying in the house and adherence to quiet hours. The request is for a maximum of 6 guests with self-check-in between 2 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Guests must check out before 10 a.m. The applicant has submitted an operational management plan that includes a code of conduct and outlines a process for managing noise complaints and emergency procedures. Mandatory quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Again, Kalgoorlie Airbnb management will manage check-in and check-out and deal with guest requirements, complaints and general caretaking services. The city has been advised that previously this was not the case. It is recommended that Council approve the application with the conditions as proposed, including compliance with the operational management plan and limiting the approval to 12 months to ensure that the activity does not result in nuisance impacts on neighbours.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions, councillors, on lot 2, number 16A, Salisbury Road, South Kalgoorlie? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to clarify the objection letter we've got states that there is an Airbnb advertised for a maximum number of 8 people. Do we clarify or double check once they've been listed as a holiday home that they are advertising for the correct amount of people?
Thank you. Is the manager able to answer that, please?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. There are conditions of reapproval, and yes, I agree that is something that we should be doing from time to time.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Just a question to the officer through the Mayor. So it states in point 2 of the officer recommendation, a maximum of 6 occupants shall be permitted for overnight stays. Noting on the objection that we received, there was more than that at the house at some times, perhaps not for overnight stays, but as guests. There's no mechanism for monitoring if the people that are renting Airbnbs actually have guests there during that time, as long as they don't stay overnight. There's nothing we can do to control that, is there?
The only points as raised in response to that community submission is video surveillance and noise monitors to look at occupancy limits. But there's nothing that we can't go and check them in. There's no check-in mechanism apart from what's online.
My question was more that occupants for overnight stays is one thing, guests coming over for a drink or a visit or afternoon tea or whatever it is, there's nothing we can do to say you can only have this many guests visiting, is there?
The applicant has noted there are definitely 3 occasions where we know, quoting from the report here, where we know that there were more than the approved amount of guests at the accommodation. So they have an approved amount of guests, not occupants as well. So I get what you're saying, Councillor Turner. I'm trying to answer the question for you, but there's no mechanism. Over to you, Paul. Anything further to add to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think a positive is that they've actually now moved to have it properly managed by Kalgoorlie Airbnb management, and they've actually gone through the process of lodging an application and having some conditions related to the approval should council have a mind to give it. And of course, there's always the issue of neighbours complaining, but I think you're right. If somebody wants to bunk down overnight, there's not a lot we can do about it.
Any further questions, councillors? No. 15.5.5 is a change of use for a home business at Lot 2, Number 3, Shaw Street in West Lamington. Back to you, Manager of Development and Growth.
Through the Mayor. Council is asked to approve an application for a home business to sell baked goods, cakes and chunky biscuits at 3 Shaw Street, West Lamington, at a family home. The property is accessed off Shaw Street and contains a single carport and a hard stand space, pardon me, to the right for the carport, from the carport when viewed from the street. The preparation and baking of the goods will occur in the kitchen of the established home, and the collection of goods is by appointment only and limited to 3 customer visits per day. The hours of operation are from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. only. The business will not operate on Saturdays, Sundays and public holidays. Customers visiting the property can park in the front of the carport. As the footpath is on the opposite side of the street, any minor overhanging of vehicles outside of the property boundary will not create an obstruction. The driveway is about 4 metres in length there. The business operator will deliver up to 10 orders per week to customers across Kalgoorlie-Boulder. As the activity is principally within the residence and does not generate noise other than limited vehicle movements, it is recommended the application be approved with the conditions as proposed to restrict the scale and operation of the business.
Thank you, Manager of Development and Growth. Any questions, councillors? No, thank you. Item 15.5.6, change of non-conforming use holiday accommodation at Lot 173. This is Unit 2, Number 178, Egan Street, Kalgoorlie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the Mayor. Council is asked to approve an application for a retrospective change of use from a group dwelling to holiday accommodation, so not holiday house in this instance, for Unit 2, 178 Egan Street. The existing 6-unit group dwelling development was approved under the former local planning scheme LPS 1 and is now not permitted in the commercial zone of LPS 2, nor is the use of holiday accommodation. Both uses are therefore considered to be non-conforming uses in the scheme. So that's actually a term in the scheme, non-conforming uses. LPS 2 allows for the conversion of one non-conforming use to another, provided the proposed use is more consistent with the zone objectives and essentially results in less impacts. The overall development is located at 178 Egan Street opposite Coles. The unit has 2 bedrooms and 1 car park on site, and additional parking has been met through on-street parking. The request is for a maximum of 4 guests with self check-in between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. Guests must check out before 10 a.m. The application has submitted an operational management plan that includes a code of conduct and outlines the process of managing noise and complaints. Mandatory quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. The owners of the property will manage any complaints, and in their absence, a family friend will take responsibility for the unit. The city received 1 submission from the public notification of the application, raising concerns about security and safety and noise generated by patrons. The applicant has advised that all guests will be required to comply with the house rules, which include keeping noise within acceptable levels. The proposed use of holiday accommodation will be more consistent with the objectives of the commercial zone and with the surrounding tourist accommodation uses of a hotel and motel. The use will also better support the city's nighttime economy. It is recommended that Council approve the application with the conditions as proposed, including compliance with the operational management plan. And if I can just add to my comments here and to clarify, so we have 1 use which has become non-conforming. It's approved, but it was approved under LPS 1. It is now a non-conforming use under LPS 2, but it's still an approved use. So the scheme says you can go from 1 non-conforming use to another, provided it better meets the objectives of the zone, and provided the impacts are or no greater or less. In this instance, we believe that in a commercial area, defining the use as holiday accommodation more aligns with those other tourist accommodation uses within that area, and in fact supports the concept of less reverse sensitivity. And reverse sensitivity is a term that's used, and it's obviously in a residential environment where someone has an approval, it becomes commercial. The land uses start changing to commercial, but the person living there and the resident still expects the same level of amenity that they had when it was a neighbourhood. So the closer you can align something to the objectives of that area and change the expectations to something more aligned with commercial, ultimately in planning terms, you don't have the same problems going forward. Now, Mr Mayor, we have this one and the other unit in that development, this other second one. And so what I've tried to do is outline to you very clearly, though, while it sounds strange, it's a way permitted in the scheme to actually allow uses to change to another use that are more aligned with the zone.
Thanks,
the changes going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Questions, councillors? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to know the fact that we've got 2 units in this complex requesting the change and both requesting 4 occupants. I note there's only 6 car parks. Where do they intend on parking?
Thank you, Paul.
Through the Mayor. Yes, this one, the second car park in this, in terms of what was approved in this location, was only 1 space per unit, and the second space was in fact taking up a car space on the street.
Thank you, Paul. Just been advised the Deputy Mayor will have a proximity interest in this matter when it is raised next week, being directly at the back of this particular development. So we'll raise that next week for a proximity. Obviously, there's a laneway at the back, and then the Deputy Mayor owns property there. Councillor O'Donnell. Sorry, Councillor Viskovich, were your questions answered? Yes, thank you. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Further on from Councillor Viskovich, under traffic and parking, it says LPS2 requires the use of holiday accommodation to provide 2 parking bays per unit or 1 bay per bedroom. In this instance, yes, you've clarified that there's only 1 parking bay available on site and that the other one can park in the street. Do we do that for every person out of it? Does every, like, house, if they've got a 3-bedroom and they can only fit 2 cars on, do we then say, yeah, that's okay, you can park in the street?
Manager Development and Growth.
Through the Mayor, the local planning scheme for dwellings only requires a maximum of 2 car parks. So you don't, there's not a pro rata, so the more you go up in bedrooms, you don't require more car parks. In this instance, they're not asking for any more than they've had in their existing approval, which is 1 on the street and 1 within the development.
Councillor O'Donnell?
Just one further. Where it says LPS2 requires the use to provide 2 parking bays, are we going away from what the LPS2 says, and we are allowing 1 on site and 1 off site? Or does the LPS2 say that you can do that? Or are they saying that, no, you must have the 2 bays, as an example for this, on site?
Thank you. Manager of Development and Growth.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the scheme does allow for parking off-site. Where it's not available on site, it is possible for vehicles to park off-site, and the engineering team have looked at that and said that there'd be no issues in this case with the vehicle associated with this application and the next one.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Okay, just to the manager through the Mayor. So sorry to go on about parking, but mine also relates to parking. So if there's 6 properties in a development and there's only 6 parking bays, there's 1 bay per property. If you have residents living at the property or a long-term renter, the strata and the people there are able to police parking a lot better, because it's not a continuing changeover of people, so you know where you're supposed to park, basically. If there's 6 properties and they all bar 1 resident who's already objected became a holiday accommodation, we would then need 10 bays with off-site parking. There'd be 5 bays taken. I've got concerns about the parking with it becoming holiday accommodation. I'm going to say to the detriment of people that live there as a long-term resident or a tenant. I just can't see how it can be managed. I've got concerns about the parking.
Sure, thank you. Paul, you're able to answer a question in there somewhere.
Through the Mayor, I understand the merit of the question. What we can't do in looking at the merits of application is look at what might happen further down the track. So we can't say, well, we're going to cloud our view on how we assess this on its merits, because if we allow this to continue to happen, it's going to be compounded. So we deal with each one on the merits. You've got 2 applications here before you that are requiring possibly 2 off-site car parks. And obviously the on-site ones will be marked and managed through the strata company, and that's what we have to deal with today or next week.
Thank you, Paul. Any other further questions? Paul, just taking something into account is the non-conforming use and the location of this particular property right in our CBD. There are, on the same block, 2 other accommodation providers. Within the space of a 400-metre radius, you probably reach double figures in terms of accommodation providers. What consideration can council have for those other accommodation providers who are providing that same service, albeit very different? So I guess the question is, can council take into any decision-making processes the location in relation to other operators of accommodation in the CBD area?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, in response to that, if the additional 2 spaces were believed to or known to impact other approved uses in the area, then you can take that into account. What you can't do is basically, I don't believe, round up all of those developments and try and do a calculation on parking which might affect this.
Sorry, I had no relation to parking whatsoever. My question is relating to use. It's being identified as holiday accommodation, but we have several other accommodation providers in that radius of the CBD.
Okay, so if that is a question around commercial impacts, sorry, it's very, very clear in the regulations under planning that commercial impacts cannot be a consideration on a planning decision. That's one of the matters in the deemed provisions. It's very clear.
Thank you. Any other further questions? No. Thank you, Paul. 1557, councillors, is very, very similar. Is there any deviation, Paul, to save on a briefing, knowing that they're both the same on the same property? Is there any deviation?
No, Mr Mayor, absolutely the same.
Okay. Councillors, does anyone have any further questions on that item? No. Thank you. That's 1557. 1558 is retrospective application for a home business and sea container, lot 319, number 1 Nanson's. Gee, that's a good night. Nanson Street in Victory Heights. Back to you, Manager of Development and Growth. I note that it is the second last item for tonight.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through the Mayor. Council is asked to consider a development application for a sea container to be permanently placed on the land. There is one there, but they're asking for formal approval for that and for it to be relocated, and for a home business relating to the storage of vending machines and associated produce at 1 Hanson Street, Victory Heights. The site contains a single house and ancillary second dwelling, a shed and a container. As I said, they want to relocate it to just off the western boundary. The applicant wishes to use the shed for the storage of vending machines and associated stock. The home business does not include any servicing of machines at the premises. All restocking and maintenance will be conducted at the vending machine leasing locations. There will be no clients or customers visiting the property. The unloading and loading of machines will occur within the large shed, which is approved, the shed, with the help of an electric pallet stacker. The movement of machines may occur from Monday to Saturday between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. and Sundays between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Delivery of vending machine stock, chocolate bars, drinks, etc. will take place once a month. The home business is restricted to the existing shed. The small trucks used for moving the machines will be stored within the property, and in fact we did double check. It actually can back into the shed, so all of the operations, loading and unloading, will occur within the shed. The sea container, which is for personal storage, is not associated with the home business, and the affected neighbour has not objected to the application. The delivery of stock to the property will occur once per month. Drinks, chips, etc., which are purchased from within Cal. A small van is used for the movement of stock to the vending machine locations. It is recommended that Council approve the application with the conditions as proposed to control the impact of the activity to an acceptable level. And I suppose my only other comment, that it's not a consideration in terms of whether you should approve this, but one of the reasons in planning terms that home businesses are permitted is that if they're successful, what can happen is they actually can go and purchase or rent commercial property and establish. It's a good way for them to establish a business.
Thank you, Manager of Development and Growth. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Biskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in regards to our application process, is there a way that we could put on the form to double check that the property is compliant with all council regulations? Manager
of Development and Growth.
I'm not too sure how to answer that because I don't know what the question is. Maybe if you could ask it in a different way.
Sure.
Is there a section that we could add on the form to ask if a property has a pool if they are compliant?
We'll take that on notice for you, Manager of Development and Growth, just to confirm, give you a little bit more thinking time. Thank you, Councillor Viskovich. No other further questions, Councillor? Councillor Bodica.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask, through the Mayor, in terms of our, we do have a sea container policy, don't we? And
Yes.
and this does run in line with, sea containers within the city. The one thing I did notice was they said that they had had a new neighbour who had, put in a complaint about the sea container. Has that changed? Is that note there, the other note saying that people were happy for it
Just
to
to
go ahead?
correct you, Councillor Bodica, there's no complaint. It's actually support for the application.
It says, while it's previously, while it has not previously caused any issues, recent concerns appear to stem from complaints initiated by a new neighbour, is what I'm going. Application for sea container permit at Nancy. About Nancy.
Yep, okay. The community response that we have under 15.5.8.2, we have no objections to a vending machines. Well, sorry, it's actually confidential, so I won't repeat the rest of it.
Oh.
But can you particularly highlight which report that is?
Yeah, that was the Nansen one there.
Is it part of the
Part of the
confidential attachment?
I
Okay.
won't worry about that then, but what I was going to say is, in terms of everything, so we're really looking at sea containers. It's not an issue within the city that sea container is there, and it, sort of runs in with all of our policy, correct?
Through the Mayor, there's no issues with that, with the sea container relocation. And just to confirm, the concerns around the property were not about this proposal of the sea container. They're around other nuisance effects which don't relate to this application.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bodica. Also note, I've just found your comment as well. There's a separate application to this, two different applications that are in the attachment. Further questions, councillors? No, thank you, Paul. And guess what? The last one, the development application, Medical Centre and Office, Lot 52, number 158-160 Egan Street, Kalgoorlie. This one is over to you, Paul, Manager of Development and Growth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. So Council is asked to approve proposal for the alterations to the north-eastern internals of the existing building at 158-164 Egan Street, Kalgoorlie, as well as associated signage. The Royal Flying Doctor Service is looking to occupy half of the building for a medical centre to augment their operations at the airport. The building previously housed a medical centre and offices prior to a fire in December 2022. 8 car parks required for the proposed development. That's from the scheme assessment. Overall, 13 car parks are available for the entire building, and there's no evidence of parking issues when the building functioned in its entirety. 3 bicycle parking bays are required, but LPSDs can be easily accommodated within the site. The proposed signage to the front of the building reflect the Royal Flying Doctor Service corporate logo. It is recommended that Council approves the application with the conditions as proposed. So just to clarify, they want to do some alterations and internal changes, and the sign is those two things that have triggered this application, not per se the use of the building for a medical centre, because that was already approved.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions? Councillor O'Donnell.
I'll just stick with the parking bay theme. It says there were 13 parking bays at rear of the building, yet in the officer recommendation there's not one mention of parking bays except for the bicycles. What happens if because there's nothing mentioned, I take it the owner can just not allow any customers to park in the rear of their premises? They can just say park in the street.
Councillor O'Donnell, just noting the first line, 8 vehicle parking bays are required for the proposed development. The site contains 13 vehicle parking bays which comply with the parking requirement.
Yes, I agree. That's what it said earlier. But in the officer recommendation, there's no mention saying customer parking is to be utilised in the rear of the premises. As an owner of business, you might want to utilise parking bays, take over doing other things, and
Sure.
I'm just going along with the parking theme.
Sure. So
Because
under LPS,
another business could come along and say, do you know what I mean? Well, they don't use parking on their premises, why should I?
Thank you. Under LPS 2, the land use of medical centre has the provision for just 3 vehicle parking bays per consulting room. So they're proposing 4, I believe. So, Paul, over to you to confirm, just to add some other context.
Yes, through Mr Mayor. Yes, the numbers work fine. So overall there's 13. There's no issue with parking. There is a condition, actually, I'm not too sure whether councillors noticed it. It doesn't give a number, but it says the parking of vehicles in association with a home business must be contained within the subject lot. So they'll use their 8 car parks out of the 13. I presume, like any commercial development, and such as down the back of the endowment block as well, those car parks will be numbered and allocated to each of the uses, but we don't see a problem there.
Councillor O'Donnell?
Yes, I thought the manager just made a comment about in the officer recommendation it's mentioned about parking, and I can't find it.
Yeah, under my officer recommendation, it doesn't have. However, it does state all building works to be carried out under this development approval are required to be contained within the boundaries of the subject lot. That's point 3. Was that what you were referring to there, Manager?
Sorry, let me correct that. Yes, you are correct. I was looking at a different one. We haven't required that they allocate parking or put a condition on this because we believe there's enough. In fact, they might not use it all. And I think, as I said, the centre hasn't had any issues before, and we consider that will be worked out. But look, if councillors want to put a number in there, then obviously they have that's something that is a concern to them, then they should.
Councillor O'Donnell, yeah, any further follow-up?
No, the only reason I brought it up was in every other business plan, holiday home, everything, there's always parking. And I just noted this one wasn't mentioned.
Sure. I think it states there under LPS 2, under the land use of medical centres, it's covered, so therefore there's no requirement for it to be under an officer recommendation with further follow-up. No worries. Councillor Turner.
So just to the manager through the mayor, I think what Councillor O'Donnell was trying to get at, that he understands that there's adequate parking at the back of the building with 13 places, but there's nothing in there that says that they have to use those places for people that come there, so they could then be using that parking out the front. Then is there a direction for people to actually use that? That's what I think what his concern is that they'll use the off-site the front parking, and there's no direction to say you must use your own parking, because we've ignored, because there's got plenty of parking. We haven't put a
I think we're getting bogged down on this one, but over to you, Manager of Development and Growth.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. The application is for internal changes and for signage. If it wasn't for those two things, they would not have to lodge an application. The building already has an approval for a medical centre, so it would be beyond our powers, I believe, to try and control the parking further when they haven't applied for it.
Thank you. I think that answers it quite clearly. Thank you, Paul. Any other further questions? It's a great answer. Oh, here we go. Councillor Winner's still awake. Councillor Winner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Just a point of clarification, if I may. The Acrod parking bay that's mentioned within the report, is that contained at streets point, or is there an Acrod parking bay capacity behind in the enclosed car park?
Manager, did you get that? The Acrod parking bay, is that referring to the street one? Sorry, Councillor Winner, feel free to adjust my question here. Was it referring to the street Acrod parking bay, or is there an Acrod parking bay located on the premises at the side of the back? Was that correct, Councillor Winner? Yes. Thank you.
Through the chair, I actually don't have the details to confirm that, but as I said, they're not changing the use of the building and they're not changing the class. So I don't believe we have any powers to require it under the legislation. You could advise, and we can include an advice note saying that Acrod Bay actually should be provided, if it's not there.
Thank you, Paul. Just a clarification from the Deputy Mayor, who has noted that there is 13 parking bays, including an Acrod Bay. So that is in the report. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Winner. Any further questions?
That's it from me, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions from councillors? No. Thank you, Paul. 17. Confidential items. There are nil at this stage, councillors, for our meeting next week, and I'll close our agenda briefing at 8:04 p.m. Thank you to our staff for answering our questions tonight. Thank you to the Director of Engineering, sitting in the role tonight of the CEO, and thank you very much for your participation.